Hi, welcome again to the Old Principle. This is lesson 109. How much land does a man need? Now, this is quite an old story, written by a famous author. So we need a storyteller. Whoa, here she comes. We almost match the same color today, don't we?
Yes.
Okay. Number 109. How much land does a man need? Go ahead, sweetheart.
Leo Tolstoy once wrote a story about a successful peasant farmer who wasn't at all satisfied with his lot in life. He wanted to have more of everything. One day he received an unbelievable offer. For 1,000 rubles, that's US $34, he could buy all the land he could walk around in a day. The only catch in the deal was that he had to be back at his starting point by sundown. He decided he'd think big and go for a large piece of land. Early the next morning he started out, walking at a fast pace. By midday he was getting quite tired, but he kept going, covering more and more ground. He wasn't very far into the afternoon when he began to realize that his greed had taken him far from the starting point. He began to wonder if he could make it back by sundown. He quickened his pace. He was jogging now, stumbling because his legs didn't have the strength that they had earlier in the day. As the sun began to sink low in the sky, he began to run. He knew that if he didn't make it back by sundown, the opportunity to become an even bigger landholder would be lost. As the sun began to sink into the horizon, he came within sight of the finish line. Gasping for breath, his heart pounding, he called upon every bit of strength left in his body, and finally staggered across the line just before the sun disappeared. He immediately collapsed, blood streaming from his mouth. In a few minutes he was dead. The man's servants wept while they dug his grave. They were allowed to dig it on the land that he wanted to buy. It was not much more than 6 feet long and 3 feet wide. After all, how much land does a man need?
Have you ever heard this story before?
I think so.
Yeah,
Yes.
I'm sure that when we were younger, I heard this story somewhere. I don't remember. Anyway, now you've heard the story again, and we're going to go through it here. Thank you. You're free for a few minutes.
Okay.
Okay, so how much land does a person need? Okay, Leo Tolstoy, a famous author, Tolstoy, okay, I think came from Russia or somewhere thereabouts, once wrote a story about a successful peasant farmer. Now, the first thing you need to keep in mind is that he is successful. He is a successful peasant farmer. Okay, what is peasant farmer? A peasant farmer is a 农夫. Peasant is 一般的农夫. Peasant, nowadays, peasant gives the idea of being a kind of ordinary, maybe sometimes poor. But this farmer was a successful peasant farmer, a successful farmer, okay, who wasn't at all satisfied with his lot in life. Now, what does it mean when it says wasn't at all satisfied with his lot in life? 他不是很满意 他的人生的命运。Okay? Lot in life. What is your lot in life? Usually it means, well, what are you doing? Or what have you done? 你的命运. Going on. He wanted to have more of everything. Okay. He wanted more and more and more of everything. A lot of people are that way, right? Except for this time, it became a little bit 过分, a little bit too much, as you will see in the story going on. One day he received an unbelievable, 很难以置信的 or 难以相信的. Sometimes we would say incredible, unbelievable, offer. Somebody wants to give him something. Okay. For 1,000 rubles. Is that rubles or rubles? Anyway, whatever. Maybe it's supposed to be rubles. For 1,000. So this is obviously Russia, right? Okay. $34 US. I thought I would put the US there for you. Okay. Still probably doesn't make any difference. Okay. He could buy all the land. 可以买 all the land. 多少地呢？可以买 that he could walk around in a day. So that means he has to go around this land. So he's going around the land. Okay. And if he goes all the way around the land, then that land is his. How much did it cost? $34 US, 1,000 rupees. Okay, with that, he said, not a bad idea going on. The only catch in the deal, okay, now, here is a very good English word. The only catch in the deal, 交易, okay, deal, it's transaction, okay, this is, or you could say simply, 这件事情的唯一的关键, okay, catch means that here is a condition, 条件, okay. Only sometimes when we use the word catch, we mean sort of a negative condition, okay. So you get the idea that 有一点负面上的意思呢, okay. The only catch in the deal was that he had to be back at his starting point at sundown. Okay, he had to be back. 他必须回到他的起点. When? When the sun went down. 这个日落, 太阳下山等等. Okay, that is sundown. So he had to go all the way around and then come back by sundown. Going on. He decided he'd think big. Okay, what does it mean to think big? Big. He had to think, in this case is 他定的理想远大的这个理想. In other words, he said, oh, I'm not just going to go around a little piece of land. I am going to go around a big piece of land. Okay? He would think big. Sometimes I tell young people, think big. Set your ideals. 把你的理想定得高。Okay? So, think big. He decided he would think big. Okay? And go for, yeah, in this case, go for means 试一试. Okay? A large piece of land. 一大块这个土地. So he's going to go around a large piece of land. Going on. Early the next morning, okay, 第二天一大早, he started out walking at a fast pace. Okay, what does it mean to be walking at a fast pace? That means that his walking speed was quite fast. Okay, 很快. By midday, when is midday? Well, you just think. Mid is in the middle, day, in the middle of the day. Okay, so that wasn't too hard. By midday, he was getting quite tired, 疲劳. He's tired. Okay? But he kept on going. He kept on going, covering more and more ground. Covering. Now, to cover means to 覆盖. Yeah, maybe you could use that word, but covering means to go a certain distance. So he's going a greater and more greater distance. Ground, of course, it looks like you're covering the ground, but it doesn't mean, it simply means you're traveling a greater distance. Okay? He wasn't very far into the afternoon. So now he is into the afternoon. Okay? Now it's afternoon. Remember the deal. 这个关键, the catch, the condition. You have to return to what? Yes, that's right. Your starting point. So I imagine he was a long ways away. We'll find out. He wasn't very far into the afternoon. 已经下午刚开始不久 when he began to realize 他就慢慢的就开始想 okay, realize 开始想 this is he's thinking that his greed had taken him too far from the starting point. Oh, what is greed? 贪心. Of course, you're not greedy, are you? I hope I'm not greedy. But he was greedy, and he had gone a long ways away. Okay. And it says he began to realize his greed had taken, in this case, taken him to 使他 far from the starting point. 离他的起点远远的. So he is a long ways away from his starting point. Going on, he began to wonder. Okay, now, wonder is an interesting word. Wonder is an interesting word because wonder has several meanings. In this case, wonder means 怀疑, to doubt. Another way of saying, he began to doubt. He began to wonder if he could make it back before sundown. What does it make it? English is so much fun, isn't it? To make it back. What does make it back means? To travel back or to go back by 太阳日落. Okay? Sundown. So, he's doubting, He's worried. Now, he quickened his pace. What does quick? Well, of course, you know what quick means. Quick means quick. Quick. Quick means quick. No, faster. It doesn't. So if you quicken your pace, you speed up your speed or speed up your pace. That means you start to walk faster. Well, even more than walking. He was jogging now. 现在叫做开始慢跑. Okay, so now he's going faster and faster. Why? Because he's worried. He's too greedy and he's gone too far. He's jogging now. 现在他在慢跑. Stumbling. Okay. What is to stumble? You know what stumble is? I should ask Mrs. Ash. She's sitting over there and see what is the stumble. Do you know what it is in Chinese?
跌倒.
Yeah, good. 跌倒. Okay. So if you're stumbling, in this case, stumbling means 跌跌撞撞的. In other words, he's not just stumbled once, but he's stumbling and he's stumbling and he's stumbling. More than one stumble. Okay? He's stumbling because his legs, 他的大腿, okay, didn't have the strength they had earlier in the day. Of course, at the start of the day, you have strength. But at the end of the day, you don't have so much strength. Do you know how that is? How do you feel at the end of a day? How do you feel? You feel tired, especially if you're exercising and it's something that you don't usually do. So his legs were running out of energy, okay? As the sun began to sink low in the sky, he began to run. Okay? The sun is going down, it's sinking low, so he says, I got to start running. First walking, then jogging, now running. Okay? He knew that if he didn't make it back, here's this make again. If he didn't return or go back to by sundowns, back to the beginning point, the 起点, he knew that if he didn't make it back, the opportunity, 这个机会能够变成更大的地主 landholder, okay? Landholder. Sometimes we say landowner, 地主, okay? So he said, I'm afraid that I'm going to lose my opportunity to become a landholder. It would be lost. 我会失去这个机会. Going on. As the sun began to sink beyond the horizon, similar to the last sentence, but we've added a new word. Horizon. 这个水平线. Okay, when you look a long, long, long ways away, and you see off in the distance, you see a line, 水平线. Okay, that is the horizon. So as the sun now began to sink into the horizon, time is almost up. Its sun is going down. He came within sight. Okay, what does it mean? 他来到，能够看到 the finish line, 终点线. Okay, so now he sees it. There's the finish line. There's the finish line. And the sun is already coming down to the horizon. Going on. Gasping for breath. 喘气. Okay? Gasping. Have you ever exercised and you're just gasping for breath? Well, he was gasping for breath. His heart was pounding, 蹦蹦跳. His heart was pounding. He called upon every bit of his strength. So he is trying now as hard as he possibly could. He's running, he's stumbling, he's falling, he's walking, running, stumbling, falling. And he's trying to get every bit of energy that he can possibly muster. Of course, he's very tired, but he says, I've got to do it. I've got to do it. Going on. And finally, he's staggered. Staggered means that he's almost falling over. He's staggered across the line just before the sun disappeared. He made it. The sun was just disappearing, and he made it. Going on. Immediately, he immediately collapsed. 崩溃了，垮下来. He fell to the ground. Blood was streaming out from his mouth. Blood was coming out from his mouth. Streaming means there was not just a little blood, a lot of blood was coming. 这个血，这个流血从他的嘴唇出来的. Okay, streaming from his mouth. In a few minutes, he was dead. 他死了. Going on. The man's servants wept. 他的佣人 while they dug 挖一个 okay 坟墓 okay a grave, and they were allowed to dig it on the land he wanted to buy. 奇怪，他们就可以把他的坟墓挖在什么地方？他要买的那块地。Okay, the man's servants wept while they dug the grave, and they were allowed to dig it on the land he wanted to buy. Going on. It was not much more than 6 feet long and 3 feet wide. So that's how much land it took. 6 feet by 3 feet. Going on. After all, 毕竟或最后 how much land does a man need? 一个人需要多少地? Okay, 6 feet by 3 feet. That's all the land he needed. Okay, well, with that story, maybe we ask Mrs. Ash to come out here. When we ask Mrs. Ash to come out here, it's totally unrehearsed. She has no idea what I'm going to ask her. Let me just get my story here, just in case. So, Is it easy or hard to be greedy?
Oh, easy.
It's easy to be greedy.
Yeah.
Actually, probably it's kind of greediness. 贪心 is kind of like a selfishness.
Oh, yes.
Okay, we
Right.
want everything for ourselves. Now I'm going to ask you a question. I'll give you 10 seconds to think about an answer. What was one thing, a very greedy thing that you did? Greedy. Okay. Obviously, you didn't run around a piece of land because you don't like to run. Well, you'd like to run a little bit, but not like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can you think of something that is a very common thing that maybe at one time you were a little greedy?
Well, I wanted a certain clock.
You wanted a clock.
Uh-huh.
And so did you get a clock?
Well, in order to get that, I had to hold a party.
Oh, and so you had to have a party, and the people came to the party so that you could, and the more people who came to the party, the more points you got, 得分数. And if you get a lot of points, then you get a clock.
That's right.
So you were a little bit greedy.
Yes, but you know what happened to the clock?
What happened?
In the end, it corroded.
It corroded, 就生锈了. So your clock didn't last very long.
That's right.
Okay. Well, anyway, you can write to us and tell us what you think about Leo Tolstoy's story. Now, we do have a website, and you can write the email address. Our email address is theoldprinciple@gmail.com. theoldprinciple@gmail.com. 我们的网站是 www.theoldprinciple.org. Hey, we've enjoyed being with you. Hope that you will join us next time.
Bye.